If you've ever been treated like the family failure, hit that like button and subscribe right now. You're not going to want to miss what happened next. My name is Jordan Hayes, and for 26 years I was the disappointment. The sister who gave up on her potential to work retail while my younger brother Cameron built his luxury import business. The failure who managed a basic store while Cameron closed six-figure deals. The embarrassment who lived modestly while Cameron drove a Porsche and wore Rolex watches. What nobody in my family knew was that my retail job was carefully constructed cover. For the past 6 years I'd been the CEO of Meridian Supply Group, a $470 million conglomerate that controlled distribution networks for luxury goods across North America. We owned warehouses in 17 cities, exclusive contracts with 143 international manufacturers, and logistics systems that moved $2.1 billion in products annually. If you imported luxury goods in this country, watches, leather goods, high-end electronics, designer furniture, you dealt with my network. You might not know my company's name, but you paid us one way or another. And I'd kept it completely secret from every single person in my family. The decision to hide my success started 9 years ago when I was 20 and working my first job out of college. Assistant manager at a luxury retail store. I'd graduated with degrees in supply chain management and business analytics, turned down corporate positions at Amazon and Target, and took what my family considered a starter job. My father was mortified. 4 years of college to fold clothes? Cameron's already planning his import business and he's still a sophomore. He has vision. You're wasting your education. My mother sighed dramatically. I had such high hopes for you, Jordan. Cameron's going to be running an empire while you're asking people if they need help finding their size. Cameron, then 18 and bursting with unearned confidence, smirked. Not everyone can handle pressure, sis. Retail's safe. I get it. That moment crystallized everything. My family saw what they expected to see: failure, lack of ambition, playing small. They never thought to ask why someone with my credentials would choose luxury retail specifically. Because I wasn't just learning to manage a store. I was learning luxury supply chains from the inside. Where products came from, how they moved through networks, which distributors controlled which markets, where the real profit margins lived. I was mapping an entire industry while my family assumed I was just good at folding cashmere. Within 2 years I was regional manager overseeing 14 stores. Within 3 I was director of procurement, negotiating directly with international suppliers. Within 4 I'd identified a massive inefficiency. The luxury supply chain was fragmented, expensive, and controlled by outdated intermediaries who added cost without adding value. So I built something better. At 24 I launched Meridian Supply Group with $800,000. Money I'd saved aggressively and invested carefully while living in a tiny apartment and driving a 10-year-old Honda. I partnered with 3 manufacturers who were frustrated with existing distributors. We offered better terms, faster logistics, and transparent pricing. Within 18 months, we had 23 manufacturer contracts and $47 million in revenue. Within 3 years, we'd acquired 2 struggling competitors and hit $180 million. By year 5, we were doing $470 million annually with 287 employees across North America. My personal net worth exceeded $60 million. My annual compensation was $3.2 million base plus equity appreciation. I owned a penthouse downtown, purchased through an LLC. I had investment properties worth $8 million. I could have bought Cameron's Porsche with 1 month's salary and not noticed the expense. But I told my family none of it. Instead, I let them believe I was still in retail management. Regional operations sounded boring enough that nobody asked follow-up questions. I drove my old Honda to family events. I wore practical clothes instead of designer labels. I lived modestly in public while building an empire in private. I was testing something. Would my family ever value me without impressive credentials? Would anyone ever ask about my actual work, my actual life, my actual achievements? The answer revealed itself at every family gathering for 6 years. Cameron's business launched 3 years ago. Hayes Luxury Imports, specializing in high-end European goods. Watches, leather accessories, premium electronics, designer furniture. He raised $200,000 from our parents and their friends, rented a fancy office, hired a sales team, and immediately started acting like he'd built Amazon. Every family dinner became a Cameron highlight reel. His latest shipment from Italy, His newest client, a local celebrity. His growing inventory. His plans for expansion. Cameron closed a $90,000 order last week. Dad would announce to anyone within earshot. Selling Swiss watches to a jewelry chain. That's my son, always thinking big. Mom would beam. And he's only 24. Imagine what he'll accomplish by 30. Then they'd remember I existed. Jordan, you're still doing the retail management thing? Still working for that same company? Still there, I'd say with a smile. Keeps me busy. Well, it's steady work, Mom would say with poorly concealed pity. Not everyone can be an entrepreneur like Cameron. I'd watch my brother soak up the praise, his ego inflating further with each compliment. And I'd take detailed mental notes. What my family didn't see, what they couldn't see because they never looked, was what I saw in my role. Cameron's business was built on my infrastructure. Every luxury import in this region moved through distribution networks I controlled, including his. Hayes Luxury Imports used 3 primary suppliers for European goods. All 3 manufacturers had exclusive North American distribution agreements with Meridian Supply Group. Cameron didn't buy directly from European manufacturers. He bought from my regional distributors, which were subsidiaries of my company. He didn't know because the subsidiary names were different, the contracts were managed by my VPs, and the supply chain was complex enough that most small importers never understood the full network. They just knew they called a distributor, placed orders, and products arrived. Cameron was paying my company's markup on every single item he imported. His successful business was inadvertently funding my profit margins. 6 months ago, Cameron announced he was scaling up significantly. He'd been doing around $2 million annually in sales, respectable for a 3-year-old import business, but not the empire he pretended it was. Now he wanted to triple his inventory, expand to 5 new product categories, open a showroom, and establish Hayes Luxury as the premier import company in the region. I'm launching the new phase next month, he announced at Sunday dinner, radiating confidence. Big party, major clients, press coverage. This is going to put Hayes Luxury on the map. Dad raised his wine glass. To Cameron. Building something real while others play it safe. I didn't react. Just filed the information away. Because I knew something Cameron didn't. Scaling up meant dramatically increasing his supply chain needs. And every new supplier he'd need to access had exclusive contracts with my network. 2 weeks after his announcement, my VP of Distribution, Marcus, forwarded me a routine approval request. New client expanding volume significantly. Hayes Luxury Imports. Requesting access to 12 additional product lines. Estimated $500,000 in quarterly orders. Standard terms. I stared at the request for a long moment. Hayes Luxury Imports. My brother's company, requesting approval to access more of my supply network without knowing I controlled it. Hold on this, I told Marcus. I'll review personally. I spent 6 hours analyzing Cameron's business finances. He'd submitted 3 years of financial statements as part of the expanded access application, standard procedure for larger accounts. The picture wasn't pretty. Hayes Luxury did $2.1 million in revenue last year with net profit of $87,000, a 4.1% margin. Industry standard was 12 to 15%. His overhead was too high, his pricing too aggressive, his inventory management inefficient. He'd maxed out 2 business credit lines totaling $180,000. He'd taken an additional $120,000 personal loan from our parents, which I learned from the financial disclosures, to fund his expansion. He was leveraged to the breaking point, betting everything on this scale-up working perfectly. If it didn't, if the expanded inventory didn't move fast enough, if his margins stayed compressed, if any significant orders fell through, he'd be bankrupt within 6 months. And here he was, requesting access to my premium supply lines so he could dig himself deeper into debt buying inventory at my markup rates. I called Marcus. What's your assessment of Hayes Luxury as a credit risk? Borderline, he said honestly. Revenue's okay, but margins are thin and debt load is concerning. If I didn't know anything else, I'd approve cautiously with a $200,000 credit limit and 30-day payment terms instead of our standard 60-day. Do that, I said. Approve the access but with tight terms. And Marcus? If they miss any payments, I want to know immediately. Understood. I didn't block Cameron's expansion. That would have been vindictive and unfair. But I wasn't going to give him preferential terms either. He'd get the same deal any moderately risky client would get, access to products but with protections for my company. The launch party was scheduled for a Thursday evening. Cameron rented a trendy event space downtown, hired caterers, invited every potential client and industry contact he could find. The whole family was expected to attend his celebration of entrepreneurial success. I almost didn't go, but curiosity won. I dressed in my standard professional attire, elegant but understated. Black theory pantsuit, simple jewelry, minimal makeup. The outfit of someone successful who didn't need to prove it. The event space was impressive. Floor-to-ceiling windows, sophisticated lighting, bars at both ends serving premium cocktails. Display cases showed Cameron's inventory: Swiss watches, Italian leather goods, German electronics, French furniture. Probably $300,000 worth of products, all purchased through my distribution network at markups he didn't know I controlled. Cameron held court in the center of the room, wearing an expensive suit and his signature Rolex, talking expansively to a crowd of admirers. Mom and Dad flanked him like proud royalty. I arrived quietly, grabbed a glass of wine and positioned myself near the back. Observing. Drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from tonight. 20 minutes into the event, Cameron stepped onto a small stage with a microphone. The room quieted. "Thank you all for coming tonight," he began, his voice full of practiced confidence. 3 years ago, I had a vision: to bring the finest European luxury goods to discerning American clients. Tonight, we're celebrating not just what Hayes Luxury has accomplished, but what we're becoming. Applause rippled through the crowd. Starting next month, we're expanding to 12 new product categories, tripling our inventory and opening our flagship showroom. This is real enterprise-level importing, not small-time retail operations. His eyes found me in the crowd. Some people are content with basic jobs playing small. That's fine, the world needs workers. But Hayes Luxury Imports is for people who think bigger, who build something meaningful, who operate at a level where real business happens. Dad beamed. Mom wiped away a proud tear. Several guests glanced at me with pity. The entrepreneur's sister who worked retail. I sipped my wine and checked my emails. Cameron continued his speech, talking about his revolutionary approach to luxury imports, and his exclusive supplier relationships, and his industry-leading customer service. My phone buzzed. Marcus calling. I stepped into the hallway and answered. "What's up?" "Jordan, sorry to interrupt your evening, but we've got a situation. Hayes Luxury Imports just submitted their first large order under the expanded access. $127,000 in products across 8 categories. But there's a problem." "What problem?" 3 of the product lines they're ordering have minimum order quantities they don't meet individually. Normally we'd combine orders across clients to meet MOQs, but Hayes Luxury's credit terms are 30-day payment, and these particular manufacturers require payment before shipping. So we'd need Hayes Luxury to pay up front for these items, which might be a cash flow issue for them. I thought quickly. What's our normal policy? For clients at their credit tier, we require 50% deposit on orders over $100,000, balance due on delivery. Then that's what we require from Hayes Luxury. Send the invoice. Got it, Jordan. Given that this is your brother's company, I wanted to confirm you're comfortable with standard terms rather than standard terms, Marcus. Hayes Luxury gets treated exactly like any client with their risk profile. No better, no worse. Understood. I hung up and returned to the event. Cameron was finishing his speech to thunderous applause. 15 minutes later, I watched him check his phone. His expression shifted from confusion to concern. He showed the screen to someone standing next to him, probably his business partner or accountant. They had an intense whispered conversation. I knew what they were looking at. An invoice for $63,500 due immediately before order processing. Cameron's face had gone slightly pale. He excused himself and walked quickly toward a quiet corner, phone pressed to his ear. I drifted casually closer, just within earshot. What do you mean I need to pay up front? Cameron's voice was tense, trying to stay quiet. We have net 30 terms. I understand MOQ requirements, but no, I don't have $63,000 liquid right now, that's why we have payment terms. This is unacceptable, we're a valued client. I smiled slightly and turned away. He was learning that valued client status meant exactly nothing when you didn't meet order minimums. The party continued, but Cameron's energy had shifted. He was distracted, checking his phone constantly, his confident smile now looking forced. An hour into the event, my phone rang again. Marcus. Jordan, Hayes Luxury just contacted our customer service demanding to speak with a supervisor about the payment terms. They're saying this is going to damage the business relationship, and that they deserve better treatment given their expansion plans. How do you want us to handle it? Transfer them to me, I said. You sure? Transfer them. 30 seconds later, my phone rang with an internal transfer. I answered. This is Jordan Hayes, CEO of Meridian Supply Group. I understand there's a concern about payment terms. There was a pause. Then Cameron's voice, not recognizing me. Yes, finally someone with authority. Look, I run Hayes Luxury Imports and we've been a client for 3 years. This sudden demand for upfront payment is completely unreasonable. We have net 30 terms, we've always paid on time, and this is going to damage our relationship with your company. Mr. Hayes, I said, keeping my voice professionally neutral. According to our records, Hayes Luxury has net 30 terms for orders under $100,000. For larger orders, our standard policy for clients in your credit tier is 50% deposit. This policy exists because we're fronting significant capital to meet manufacturer minimums on your behalf. That's not acceptable. We're expanding significantly, which means much larger future orders for Meridian. You should be treating us like a premium client. I understand your position, I said calmly. However, premium client status is determined by actual volume, payment history and financial stability, not projected future orders. Hayes Luxury currently represents 0.3% of our quarterly volume. When you reach 2% or higher, we can discuss enhanced terms. This is ridiculous, Cameron said, frustration bleeding through. Who makes these decisions? I want to speak with someone who actually understands business development. You're speaking with her, I said, letting a hint of steel enter my voice. I'm the CEO. I make these decisions. And Mr. Hayes? I understand business development very well. Which is why I know that companies with 4% profit margins and debt-to-equity ratios above 2.5 don't qualify for extended credit terms. You're welcome to pay the deposit and proceed with your order, or you're welcome to find alternative suppliers. Those are your options. Silence on the line. How do you know our margin and debt ratios? He asked slowly. You submitted 3 years of financials when requesting expanded access. We review them. That's standard due diligence for any client requesting increased credit. More silence. Mr. Hayes, I have several calls waiting. What's your decision? I need to check my cash position. Can I call back in an hour? You have until 9 a.m. tomorrow. After that, the order cancels automatically. I hung up. I returned to the party. Cameron was standing with our parents, his face flushed, gesturing intensely while talking in a low, urgent voice. Dad looked concerned. Mom looked confused. I approached casually, wine glass in hand. Everything okay? I asked innocently. Cameron glared at me. No, Jordan, everything's not okay. I'm dealing with a massive supply chain issue that could derail the entire expansion. Not that you'd understand. This is enterprise-level business problems. What kind of problem? I asked. My distributor is suddenly demanding upfront payment for a huge order. Completely unreasonable. I've been a client for 3 years, always paid on time, and now they're treating me like some startup with no history. What's their reasoning? I asked, genuinely curious how he'd explain it. Something about order minimums and credit tiers. It's nonsense. They just don't understand that I'm about to scale significantly. They should be treating me like a premium client. Did they explain their credit tier criteria? I asked. Some garbage about volume percentages and debt ratios. Look, Jordan, this is complex business stuff. The point is they're being unreasonable and it might kill my expansion. Hit that subscribe button if you've ever had to set boundaries with toxic family, because what happened next changed everything. Dad put his hand on Cameron's shoulder. Can you get the money from somewhere else? A bridge loan. Not by tomorrow morning. And even if I could, it would be at terrible terms. I'm already leveraged. Mom looked worried. We gave you $120,000 6 months ago. Where did that go? Into inventory. Into the showroom deposit. Into this launch event. Building a business requires capital, Mom. I took a sip of wine. Have you considered asking your distributor about their credit tier requirements? Understanding what you'd need to do to qualify for better terms. Cameron shot me an irritated look. I don't need business advice from someone who works retail management, Jordan. No offense, but you're not operating at this level. Fair enough, I said mildly. Though I am curious, who's your distributor? Meridian Supply Group. Not that you'd know them, they're B2B, not consumer-facing. Interesting name, I said. What's your contact there? Some VP named Marcus. Though I just got transferred to their CO, woman named Jordan Hayes. Can you believe that? Same first name as you. She was completely unreasonable. I nearly laughed. That is a coincidence. What did she say? Basically that I don't qualify for better terms until I'm doing more volume. Which is insane because I can't do more volume without better terms. It's circular logic. Or, I said carefully, it's standard risk management. They're protecting their capital until you prove you can handle larger orders profitably. Cameron's eyes flashed. Again, Jordan, you wouldn't understand. This is sophisticated supply chain finance, not retail operations. You're right, I said. I probably don't understand. Though I am curious about one thing. How did Meridian get your financial statements? I submitted them when requesting expanded access. Standard procedure, apparently. And they showed what? Why does it matter? Just curious what kind of financials qualify as premium client worthy in your mind. Cameron's face flushed darker. My financials are fine. $2.1 million in revenue, growing every year, positive profit. The problem isn't my business, it's their inflexible policies. $2.1 million in revenue, I repeated. What was your net profit? That's not your concern. Humor me. $87,000. Which is completely normal for a growth stage business. That's about 4% margin, I said. What's industry standard? Jordan, seriously, stay in your lane. You don't know what you're talking about. Maybe not, I conceded. Though I did study supply chain management in college. And 4% margin seems low if you're trying to convince distributors you're a premium client. Dad interrupted. Jordan, now's not the time for your college trivia. Cameron's dealing with a real crisis. Of course, I said. Sorry. I'll let you handle your enterprise-level business problems. I walked away, leaving Cameron to his panic. Over the next hour, I watched him make increasingly desperate phone calls. Calling banks about bridge loans. Calling business contacts about short-term financing. Calling his business partner about liquidating something quickly. The party atmosphere had curdled. Guests were noticing Cameron's distraction. Our parents looked increasingly concerned. The celebration of entrepreneurial success was becoming a showcase of entrepreneurial stress. At 9:30 p.m. Cameron found me near the bar. Jordan. His voice was strained. Can I talk to you privately? We stepped into an empty hallway. I need to borrow $63,000, he said without preamble. Just for 2 weeks, maybe 3. Until some receivables come in. I'll pay you back with interest. I looked at him carefully. You think I have $63,000 liquid? You've been working for 6 years. You must have savings. Cameron, an hour ago you told me to stay in my lane because I work retail management. Now you think I have $63,000 to lend. He had the grace to look uncomfortable. I'm desperate, okay? This distributor is being unreasonable, and if I don't make this payment, my entire expansion collapses. Please. Why is Meridian being unreasonable? I asked. Specifically. They want payment upfront because of some policy about order minimums and credit tiers. Did you ask what you'd need to do to improve your credit tier? Something about higher volume and better margins and lower debt ratios. Impossible standards. Or, I said gently, realistic standards for companies they're going to extend significant credit to. Cameron's frustration boiled over. God, Jordan, you sound just like that CEO woman. You don't understand how business works. Sometimes you need capital to grow, and distributors should recognize potential, not just current metrics. And sometimes, I said quietly, people mistake ambition for viability. Sometimes the problem isn't that others don't recognize your potential. It's that your business model doesn't work at the scale you're trying to force it to. So you won't help me. I didn't say that. I pulled out my phone. I said, I think you're misdiagnosing the problem. But let me make a call. I dialed Marcus on speakerphone. Marcus, it's Jordan. I'm here with Cameron Hayes of Hayes Luxury Imports. He's asked me to help him understand the payment terms situation. Can you explain the policy again? Marcus's professional voice came through clearly. Of course, Ms. Hayes. Hayes Luxury is requesting $127,000 in products. 3 of those product lines have manufacturer minimum order quantities of $50,000 each. To fulfill Hayes Luxury's order, we need to combine their request with orders from other clients to meet those minimums. Our standard policy is that we front the capital for combined orders and allow clients to pay according to their credit terms. However, when clients are in our moderate risk tier, defined as companies with debt-to-equity ratios above 2.0 or profit margins below 8%, we require 50% deposit on combined orders over $100,000. This policy exists because we're assuming significant financial risk by fronting manufacturer payments on behalf of the client. If Hayes Luxury wants to avoid the deposit, they could either order products that don't require MOQ combining, or they could improve their credit tier by demonstrating stronger financials. Cameron was staring at my phone, then at me, confusion spreading across his face. Thank you, Marcus, I said. One more question. What would Hayes Luxury need to do to qualify for your premium client tier? They'd need to either increase their quarterly volume to $400,000 or higher, or improve their financial metrics. Specifically, achieve minimum 10% profit margins and reduce their debt-to-equity ratio below 1.5. Either qualification would move them to premium tier with extended credit terms. Understood. Thanks, Marcus. I hung up. Cameron was looking at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Why do you have the direct number for Meridian Supply Group's VP of Distribution? Because, I said calmly, I'm Jordan Hayes, the CEO you spoke with earlier. The color drained from his face completely. What? Meridian Supply Group. I founded it 6 years ago. I'm the CEO. I control the distribution network you've been using for 3 years. Every product you've imported has moved through my infrastructure. Cameron's mouth opened and closed without sound. The retail management job you've been dismissing for 6 years? That was cover. I built a $470 million supply chain company while you were in college. I employed 287 people across 17 cities. I have exclusive distribution contracts with 143 manufacturers. If you import luxury goods in this region, you pay my company's markup. I pulled out my phone and showed him my email signature. Jordan Hayes, Chief Executive Officer, Meridian Supply Group. Including you, I said softly. You've been paying my markup on every item you've imported for 3 years. Your successful business has been inadvertently funding my profit margins. Cameron stumbled backward, his hand reaching for the wall to steady himself. That's not possible. You work retail. I worked retail 9 years ago to learn luxury supply chains. Then I built something better. While you were giving speeches about real enterprise, I was running actual enterprise operations. While you were talking about sophisticated business, I was making sophisticated business decisions, including decisions about your credit terms. The deposit requirement you're panicking about? That's standard risk management for clients with your financial profile. The credit tier system you think is unreasonable? That's how we protect $470 million in annual capital flow. The CEO who wouldn't give you special treatment? That was me, treating you exactly like any moderately risky client. Cameron slid down the wall until he was sitting on the floor, his expensive suit crumpling. Why didn't you tell us? Because I wanted to see if my family would ever value me without knowing my achievements. If anyone would ask about my work, my life, my actual accomplishments. If anyone would treat me with respect without impressive credentials. Every family dinner for 6 years, you talked about your business while I listened. Dad toasted you as someone building something real. Mom pitied me for playing it safe. You told me to stay in my lane at least a dozen times. My voice stayed level, but emotion was leaking through. Not once did anyone ask what I actually did. Not once did anyone wonder if there might be more to my story. You all just assumed I was failing because it made your success feel bigger. Tears were streaming down Cameron's face now. I'm so sorry. I'm so fucking sorry. I know you are, I said. But here's what happens next. Tomorrow morning, you're going to decide if you want to pay that deposit and proceed with your expansion, or if you want to acknowledge that your business model needs fundamental changes. If you proceed with the expansion on your current trajectory, you'll be bankrupt within 6 months. Your margins are too thin, your debt is too high, and your scale-up plan is based on optimistic projections that won't materialize. Alternatively, you could accept that Hayes Luxury needs to reset. Scale back, improve operations, focus on profitability instead of growth. Build a sustainable business instead of an impressive facade. I crouched down to his level. I can help you, not as your sister giving you a pass, but as an industry expert who's built what you're trying to build. But it requires you acknowledging reality. It requires you accepting that you don't have all the answers. It requires you treating me like someone with valuable expertise, not like your retail working sister who doesn't understand your level. Cameron wiped his eyes. What would you do? If you were me, I'd cancel the expansion. I'd focus on the 3 product categories where you have the highest margins. I'd cut overhead by 30%. Smaller office, smaller team, fewer expensive launches. I'd spend 6 months improving operations until your profit margin hit 12%. Then I'd expand carefully, one category at a time, financing through cash flow instead of debt. That doesn't sound very exciting, he said weakly. It's not, I agreed. It's boring, careful, sustainable business building. It's what I did for 6 years while you were giving speeches about thinking big. It's how you build something real instead of something that looks impressive until it collapses. I stood up. You have until 9 a.m. tomorrow to decide about the deposit. You have longer to decide about the rest. But Cameron, if you take my advice and accept help rebuilding Hayes Luxury properly, I'll provide resources, expertise, and connections. If you reject it and insist on proceeding with your current plan, I'll treat Hayes Luxury exactly like any other client. No better, no worse. Those are your options. I walked back toward the party, leaving him sitting in the hallway. The next morning, Cameron called Marcus at 8:47 a.m. and canceled the large order. He also requested a meeting with Meridian's business development team to discuss strategic restructuring. That meeting happened in my conference room 2 days later. Cameron, his business partner, their accountant, and me with my full executive team. We spent 4 hours doing brutal analysis of Hayes Luxury's operations. Every inefficiency, every margin problem, every operational issue. Cameron sat through it with remarkable humility, asking questions, taking notes, acknowledging mistakes. At the end, I presented a restructuring plan. Cancel the showroom lease. Lay off 4 of 7 employees. Exit 5 of 8 product categories. Focus exclusively on Swiss watches, Italian leather, and German electronics. The categories where Hayes Luxury had proven margins above 15%. Cut all marketing spending. Operate lean for 18 months while rebuilding profitability. If you execute this plan, I said, Hayes Luxury becomes profitable within 90 days and cash flow positive within 6 months. At that point we can discuss expansion, but careful, funded expansion, not debt-fueled gambling. Cameron looked at the plan for a long time. Then he looked at me. Will you help me? Really help, not just tell me what to do but teach me how to do it right. Yes, I said. But this is professional help, not family favoritism. You'll meet with my operations VP weekly. You'll implement every recommendation. You'll provide full financial transparency. And if you stop executing, I stop helping. Understood. Understood. That was 9 months ago. Cameron executed the restructuring exactly as planned. It was brutal, laying off people he'd hired, canceling the impressive showroom, admitting to clients that Hayes Luxury was scaling back. But it worked. Within 3 months his profit margin hit 14%. Within 6 months he'd paid off 1 credit line completely. Within 9 months, Hayes Luxury was doing $800,000 in annual revenue with $156,000 in net profit. A 19.5% margin that made it one of the most profitable small luxury importers in the region. Our family dinners changed dramatically. Dad asked me about business strategy, actually listening to my answers. Mom told her friends about both my children's successful businesses. Cameron asked my advice on everything from vendor negotiations to hiring decisions. But the biggest change was in Cameron himself. He stopped performing success and started building it. He stopped talking about being impressive and started focusing on being profitable. He stopped dismissing expertise and started seeking it out. Last month, Hayes Luxury placed its largest order ever with Meridian, $240,000 in inventory, paid through standard net 60 terms because Cameron had finally qualified for premium client tier through consistent performance and strong financials. When he got the approval notification, he called me immediately. "Jordan, I just got upgraded to premium tier. Thank you for everything. You earned it," I said. "Through 9 months of hard work and honest business building. Can I take you to dinner? Not to talk about business. Just to say thank you. And to actually get to know my sister. The real you, not the person I assumed you were." We had dinner last week. 3 hours of conversation about life, dreams, mistakes, growth. He told me about the pressure he'd felt to be the golden child, how it had driven him to build something impressive rather than something sustainable. I told him about the years of being invisible, how it had taught me to find validation internally rather than externally. "I wasted 6 years competing with you," he said, "when I should have been learning from you." "You're learning now," I said. "That's what matters." My phone buzzed. A text from Dad, "Sunday dinner at our place. Both of you. Mom's making your favorite, Jordan. She asked what you actually like for the first time in years." I showed Cameron the text. He smiled. "Progress. Small steps," I agreed. "But steps forward." If you've ever had to walk away from people who couldn't see your value or build success in silence while others took credit, or set boundaries that felt impossible, tell me your story in the comments. What would you have done? Does any of this feel familiar? Because sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone isn't money or opportunity. It's reality. Especially when that reality shatters the comfortable fiction they've built about themselves and about you. And sometimes being family means caring enough to let someone fail so they can learn how to succeed for real.